Welcome to the Healing Tree Podcast,
a journey in discovering God's healing ministry for us.
Simplifying the story of the Bible and the mission of Jesus through the lens of a tree.
And an invitation to experience the transformation that takes place when we're connected with our Creator.
Hi, I'm Adwoa.
And I'm Lauren.
And today we're going to be sharing our story. You're probably been wondering what exactly did happen on that plane ride that we talked about in the prologue. And so today we will be going more in details about why we are doing what we're doing and where this podcast idea started.
Yes. And just as a recap from our last episode, we were talking about fruit. And as we were looking in Ezekiel 47, we saw that on both sides of this river that is flowing from the temple, there are trees on both sides of it, and there's fruit growing on these trees. And so as we've talked about in previous episodes, we're like those trees that have our roots in the water. We're connected with God, the source of the Spirit and all life-giving power. And so when we're connected with Him, we're able to bear fruit. And we also talked about how Jesus was actually the first tree. We looked at a couple of verses showing Jesus' lineage and how it compared him to growing as the stump from the root of Jesse, and some other verses that also show he was a first tree. And as we're able to partake of his fruit, we're also transformed and changed, that we're able to bear fruit as well. And this is fruit that other people can enjoy as we're able to be witnesses for God, but also fruit that God is able to enjoy as, he sees his children being like him and showing his attributes. So now we're just going to go ahead and start talking about our trip. It's always so much fun going back and thinking about what happened. It's just wow, that really happened.
I know. Yeah, it is so surreal. And that's what it is. A life with God is so exciting, so interesting. You just don't know what's coming next. And so it all started fall of 2017. Wow, it seems like so long ago. But fall of 2017, I remember just getting this impression from God that there's next steps, or that there's something that he's preparing for. There's something that's going to happen. And I remember just having this recurring nudges from God, be prepared for these next steps. Some of the stories were, as in our chapel at our school, we have these weekly Bible study come together type things. And so they were going through the story of Abraham and looking at his calling and how God has called him out, and also how God has told him to look at the stars, and that the stars were a symbol, a reminder of how God can provide for his journey. And so looking at Abraham's story, going through that was also just kind of adding on to these nudges, I'm calling you to do something. There's going to be some next steps coming up. And it was always okay, what next steps? What is he talking about? I don't know if you remember, Lauren, I remember mentioning to you, I was just I don't know why, but I just kind of get the impression God's about to do something, and he's about to reveal some next steps, but I don't know what that could be.
Yeah, I remember you bringing that up a few times, and it was interesting because I was I wonder what that means, because like you said, our whole chapel series that quarter was just about Abraham, and in his story, it's God called him out of his place of comfort into something that he had no idea was coming. And so it was just okay. And it felt that message kept coming up in our chapel, but I think even in our personal Bible study and other messages that we were hearing, it just felt we kept hearing things about, God calling you out of something into something new and different. And so I think it was just kind of a signal that, okay, God is trying to show something. And it's we need to be watching and really listening and paying attention. And it's just kind of continued for a while, and we didn't really know what it meant. And so it was just kind of interesting going through that period and really waiting for God to kind of unfold his plan.
Yeah. And I remember God finally saying it's going to be a mountaintop. And I was just like, mountaintop, mountaintop. And he was using stories like Elijah and how he, revealed his mission to him on a mountaintop. And then also Moses and how he was able to meet God on this mountaintop through a burning bush. And also again to get his law to share with the people. And all of these stories about these people in the Bible about getting revealed their mission on a mountaintop. And so God was like, I'm going to reveal the next steps on a mountaintop. And I remember thinking, okay, interesting. So should I be looking for a mountain or should I be looking for like a mountaintop experience? And some mountaintop experience is kind of like a phrase that is thrown out in a lot of Christian circles, and really like it's code name for having like the aha moment with God or something, or like some kind of like revealing moment where God reveals something special to you and it's like, whoa, and you're having all these like ideas and just like, cool, like God is revealing all of this stuff, this information for his plans.
Yeah, it was really cool because, let's see, I think we went to a fair that our school had. So they kind of had this event for you to learn about different mission trips. Because I remember kind of earlier on in the year, us and then also one of our other friends was mentioning about possibly going on a mission trip because it's something that we were all kind of interested in at some point. And so we attended this event where they were just kind of showcasing the different locations. And so we were looking and seeing, and there were like a few that seemed interesting, but we weren't really sure, if God wanted us to do a mission trip or anything like that. It was just like, oh, we would like to do this at some point, and just kind of, keeping it in the back of our minds. And so we took the information from that, but again, didn't have a clear directive from God to say like, okay, this is what I want you to do. And so we kind of went on for a few months, just kind of with that in the back of our heads. And then I think it was like in January, so the second half of the school year, we ended up getting to go with our friend to this really cool mountain. So we ended up getting that mountaintop experience. And so we just had breakfast there, and it was just such a fun day. Just getting to be out in nature, being with Adwoa's dog, and just getting to enjoy the water and everything like that. And so it was really interesting going on the mountaintop experience. And as we came back from the mountain, is kind of when God showed us what he wanted us to do.
Yeah, it was very cool, actually. We had just finished writing a week of exams, and usually after we finish a week of exams, like us and our friends just like to do something fun just to celebrate. And so we decided to go up to this mountain, just to go up and hike there. And I brought my dog, and oh, he just loved the water. And so we went with our friend Julie, and she had her camera with her, and she snapped a few photos, which we're showing here. And it was just such a fun time. And he just like, my dog Simba just loved getting in there, running around, and it was just such a joy to just watch him being so happy there. And we had a blast. We really got to talk about some things that we faced during that exam cycle. And it was a Sunday. We came back, and Sunday means Monday's the next day, so have to be ready for class the next day. So after that mountain top trip, we went back to our study location, and we're like, all right, well, it's time to open up our books and get started for the next test cycle. It really never ends in med school. Um, and so I remember opening up my iPad and checking my email, and I see this notice, and one of the organizations on campus, they offer scholarships for some students who are willing to go to mission trips. And so they're like, well, if you're thinking of going on a mission trip and want to apply for this scholarship, today's the deadline. And so I was like, oh, we need to make our decision like today.
Yeah, that was quite interesting because we kind of forgot about it. And again, just because, it was in the back of our minds, the idea of going on a mission trip, but we didn't know, if it was something that God wanted us to do that year or sometime in the future. And so, we'd kind of been thinking about it, but it wasn't something that was really pressing on our hearts or something that, God had really shown yet that it's like, okay, I do want you to do this, and I want you to do it this year. And so we see that email, and we're just like, oh man, okay, now we got to figure out what to do, because the scholarship is for like $500. So that would have helped a lot with the mission trip costs. If any of you have ever been on a mission trip, or even just like studying abroad or something like that, you know that it can cost quite a bit of money, especially as a student. And so every bit of money is helpful. And so we were just like, okay, we thought about this, but we don't know exactly. And we just kind of decided to go in faith. And it's like, Lord, you kind of put this in our path. This is something we've been thinking of. And if you want us to go on this mission trip, allow us to get the scholarship. So we basically just both filled it out that day, feverishly trying to fill out the application, writing the essays that we needed to, uploading pictures. Like, it was just so funny, because literally we just come back from this trip and we're just on our computers and stuff, just trying to put together anything that we can in these few hours before the application is due. And so it was just so funny. We even called our parents just to kind of see what they felt about it, because it's like, we're going halfway across the world, possibly, I probably should let you know about that. So we went in and did that, and they were fine with it. So we just filled out the applications and really just prayed over it.
Yeah, and I just remember being like, okay, we have to make a decision to go on a scholarship today, but it's also, we have to make a decision of where we're going to go for this mission trip. And so we really didn't go that deep into making decisions when it was kind of an idea in our mind. And so with the urgency of like, okay, we need to make a decision now. And so we had to like look through the options and be like, okay, which one would line up with our schedules, where we go by the time our school ends at our back-in time before class starts, and which one will give us the best experience as medical students. Like, there were some for like building, like, different things, and it was like, yeah, that's not really our strength, or at least our calling at this time, like do something medical. So with all of that, like, the place that lined up with everything was Angola. I know it wasn't really set in stone, so I wasn't really sure, like, how our parents would respond when we actually say this is actually probably going to happen. And so, yeah, I remember like phoning my parents, and they were just like so gung-ho. They're like, yeah, go for it. And I've never been on a mission trip before. This would be my first official mission trip. I mean, I was like born and brought up in a mission family, but I never kind of went on a mission trip by myself. So they were like, yeah, go for it, go experience, go have fun. So I was like, great, that was easy. So there was no resistance at all. They were just so happy for me to go on this trip. So, but yeah, we were like, we never really, I don't think we even thought about like both of us getting the scholarship. Like, it was just kind of like, let's just try and see what happens. Yeah, and we were just like, okay, we'll just see what happens and go from there. And I think it was pretty soon. I think it was like a few days after that, later on in that week. We were sitting in class, and in the middle of class, like, sort of paying attention, kind of not. And then like I just kind of like slide and check my email, just, because that's, yeah, anyway. So I just slide to check my email, and I see this like, oh, scholarship. And I opened the email, and it was like, oh, you got the scholarship. And I was like, what? And then I was like, okay, I need to like fix my face and like text Lauren to see if she got the scholarship. Because I like leading up to it, I just remember just preparing myself. I was like, okay, if Lauren gets the scholarship and I don't, I have to be happy for her. And yeah, it's great that she gets it. And vice versa. If, it would happen if only one of us gets the scholarship. Well,
it would have been so sad.
So sad and awkward. So yeah.
No, that's so true. And so, yeah, I checked my email and saw that I also got it. We were just ecstatic. We were like, wow, this is amazing. Just to see the way that God, answered our prayer and really showed us, very clearly, okay, I do want you to go. I think it was really cool, the fact that we both got it, but the fact that we also got it after having filled out the application the day it was due. Because, obviously we knew why we wanted to do mission work, but, it was just something that we did kind of like at the last minute. And so it was really cool to see the way that God worked that out. And yeah, it was so amazing. And so it was exciting. And at least for me, I'd been on a few mission trips before. but I never really felt such a strong calling for God to say, like, okay, I really want you to do this trip right now. So for me, that was also something that was really significant because I never really experienced that before in my past mission trip experiences prior to this. And so, yeah, we basically just, the time that we had between then and our mission trip, it's like God just kind of kept confirming that he wanted us to go on this trip. And as it was getting closer, I don't remember which one of us brought it up first, but it was like, we really should commit this in prayer. And I think Adwoa brought up the fact that I'd been part of a group or something where they did like 40 days of fasting, not every single day, but, kind of intermittent fasting. And so we decided to do that, to do fasting and prayer. And we just, found 40 days before our trip and started doing that. And there was also an online course that our school had kind of preparing students for mission work. And so we both signed up for that and got to go through that. And there were like online modules that kind of had daily like devotionals that you could read that talked about different aspects of mission service and what it entails and just kind of how to prepare yourself physically and mentally for it. And so throughout the 40 days, we also went through that. And it was a huge blessing to really have the opportunity to be prepared for whatever it is that God had in store for us, because we really didn't know. But that 40 days was really a blessing. And it was awesome to see the way that God sustained us, because at that time we were in a clinical experience for school. We were at the hospital every day for the last bit of the school year. And so, we're both wondering, how are we going to have enough energy to get through our clinical activities for each day, but God definitely sustained us and gave us what we needed.
He really did. Yeah, I mean, going without food for a whole day, it was tough, knowing how
Agreed.
much I love food, and there was definitely some temptations, and the Lord really did help me stand my ground and be like, nope, not today, nope. And it was a huge blessing. And throughout the whole 40 days, I feel like God has just been leaving hints, dropping some messages, and just really just giving us more of an idea of what it means to do mission work. And also like that there's a risk involved, as in like we don't really know what's going to happen, and we're just stepping out in faith and just being like, all right, well, if this is where God is calling us, this is where he's calling us. And I remember towards the end of the 40 days, our pastor, Shifra, she gave this really nice Bible study, and it was talking about Daniel's three friends and the story about them being tossed into a fiery furnace. And the way that she described it is that like they decided in their hearts that they will not dishonor God, but that they will stand true for God. And when everybody else in their society was bending down to a statue of their leader, of their king, they were like, no, we bow down to God only and not to any man. And the king was like, that's not cool. So, you know the drill. Anyone who disobeys my order is going to be tossed into the flames. And they were like, okay, sure. Like, you can toss us in the flames, but we know the kind of God we serve, and he's able to save us. And even if he doesn't, we're not going to bow down to anyways. And that really made him mad. So he was like, all right, well, you know what you're doing. So you guys toss him in the fire. And so his men go approach this fiery furnace. And this fiery furnace is so hot that like, as the men are approaching them, like they are toast by the fire. But in the process of throwing them in, Daniel's three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were not singed at all. Like they were just chilling in the fire, like nothing. And everyone else is watching, just waiting for them to be burst up into like flames and ashes. And then they're like, well, that was anticlimactic. Nothing's happening, you know? And you see the guys that threw them in are like lying lifeless, and not able to stand the heat. Yet then they look a little closer and then they're like, wait a minute, didn't we throw three people in there? How come there's four people in there? That's a little strange. And then like somebody's like, wait a minute, that the fourth person looks like the Son of God. And lo and behold, Daniel's three friends were covered and protected in the flames. And so she made this point that they decided before they were tossed into the flames that no matter what, they will follow what God is asking. And so they stood their ground, and then they were launched. And so it's like at the point of launching, it's like you really can't do anything about it. You're just going. You already made the decision to go, and you're just going, no matter where it's going to land you. And it landed them in the flames. And so as she was talking, I was like, wow. And she drew this amazing diagram. I was just like, wow. I felt like God was really speaking and saying, like, yeah, like you made the decision to go. And you don't know what's going to happen in the trip. You don't know what's going to happen. But guess who's going to be with you on that trip, even if you're going to be tossed in a fiery furnace? Like, God's going to be with us on this trip. And so, yeah, I remember just going, like the next morning, Sunday morning, we study in our classroom, and there's a huge whiteboard. And I was like, all right, this is what we learned in Sabbath school yesterday. Let me show you. And I drew the whole diagram that I just learned. And yeah, and Lauren was like, wow, yeah, she got the same message that I was thinking as well.
Yeah, and that was really helpful. I kind of expressed to Adwoa, I think, a few times before. I was really excited for the trip, but every now and then, for some reason, like I would, become fearful or have like some bit of anxiety where it's just like, man, like what's going to happen on this trip? Could something bad happen? Or I don't know, it's just for some reason, these little things would come up to mind and make me have a little bit of anxiety. And so hearing that message was really comforting for me because I was like, wow, okay, this is such a good reminder. Like, that God is with you, but I feel like sometimes in the midst of trials or times when it's easy to become fearful or anxious, it's kind of like all of this stuff kind of leaves your mind. And so it was just really helpful to remember that it's like, God has called us on this trip and he will be with us and he will guide us. And I mean, sometimes people do go on trips or do work for God and things don't always turn out the way that they expect. But, either way, God is with you. And it's like, if he's called us to this, he is most definitely going to be with us through the process. So that was really helpful in kind of dispelling some of those fears that tried to come up.
Yeah, I literally felt like God was like, yeah, you might have fears and you might have like questions of like what could happen on this trip and what if something really bad happens on this trip, But he was just like, I'm with you anyways.
Okay.
Nothing to fear. There's no reason to fear. I'm with you through it all. And I'm able to, if I'm able to withstand fire that, people who came close to the fire couldn't stand it, then why are you afraid? You're in good hands. And so, yeah, like it happened, the day came, and we left the United States on June 20 of 2018. And it was me, Lauren, and three other of our classmates, Melanie, Chris, and Andrea. And we were like, great, this is so exciting. We're going to Angola. We've never been there before. And like, we don't know people that have been there before. And so we were all set and ready to go. And we were looking at our tickets that we got from the airport, and we're like, oh, who's sitting next to who, and like what are we, what are our flights looking like and all that. And thankfully our school arranged all of our flights for us, and we were part of a larger group of quite a few people going on this trip from various health fields. So we were looking at our tickets, and they did their best to really have us sit all together on the plane. But yeah, then I looked at my ticket and I was just like, wait a minute, my seat is like doesn't look like it's anywhere near you guys. That's interesting. We started off, just kind of looking at a trip, and then we're like, oh, and it looks like we're going to have a layover in France. That'll be cool. And so we were like, all right, this is going to be interesting. Let's just see how this goes.
Oh man, yeah, it's so true. It was interesting, especially with the seating. I remember I was like, oh, that's so sad. I was like, she's going to be sitting by herself. But it's interesting because that was actually a part of God's plan and we had no idea about it. And so it was really cool to see after the fact what God had in store for her being by herself. And you can explain more about that.
Yeah, just remember being like, all right, all my friends get to sit together, and I am in the abyss of the corner of the plane, and I'm just gonna guess it's time to sleep, or just try to find something to do on this long flight to France. So I find my seat, and I remember where I sat. It was like towards the back on the left-hand side of this massive plane. And I sat next to a stranger, of course. And so I just sat there. Everything got settled down. We launched into the air. Launching, huh? And I was like, yeah, it's a good time to just like open my Bible and read. And around this time, I was reading this book by Ty Gibson, and it is so good. It is so good. Oh my goodness. Like, I would so recommend it. It's called A God Named Desire by Ty Gibson. Please read it. There's so much wisdom in that book. So I was reading that book at the same time. I was also reading through the book of John in the Bible, and I felt like all of those things were set a framework for what God was going to show me on that plane. So I was sitting there and I opened my Bible, and somehow I landed on Ezekiel 47. And so I started reading it. And as I was reading it, I kid you not, it was like God was speaking. It almost felt like a pressure, almost like his presence was there. And I was like, God is here and he's really making this message. It was so heavy, so weighty. And I was reading the text of Ezekiel 47. It was just like, wow, there's this temple, and from this temple flows water. And as this water is flowing, it's touching all of these things, and the Dead Sea becomes cured, and now water and now fish are able to live and thrive in it, and then trees are erupted on both sides of the river. And the Lord was like, very clearly like, you're the trees. Like, my people are these trees. My spirit is in the water, and when you stay connected to me, you will become like a tree. And I was like, whoa, that is so cool. And it was just like, it was so clear of a message, like just through those words. It was just like the whole message of the healing tree was presented to me in that plane ride. And then before like opening that text, I prayed asking God a question, because I was reading in John where he said, when I am lifted up, I will draw all men to me. And I remember reading that text, I don't know whether it's earlier that day, but just like asking God, like, what does it mean? What does it mean exactly when I am lifted up, I will draw all men to me? Like, how does that actually look? And he answered that through Ezekiel 47. But I still didn't get that part yet. I was like, okay, this is wonderful. This is so amazing. Like, God was in this place. And I just, like, after just having that moment, I closed my Bible and I was just like, what is happening? Oh my goodness. And like the person next to me is fast asleep. Everybody's fast asleep and it's like dark and silent. And I was just like, whoa. And I just put on my like earphones and I just listened to music, and like the songs that happened to play on my music were songs about abiding and staying connected and about divine and abiding and being in his presence. And I was like, I am vibing to these songs. They mean so much to me right now. Like, my playlist became alive. I mean, it was already alive before, but it was more alive that day. And then now we land in France, and I was just like, oh, I cannot wait to share this. This is just so amazing what just happened. And I was just like so full, like I didn't even know how to formulate my words. Like I was just like, whoa, wow, this is so cool. And so we get down, and like a lot of our people on our trip ended up having layover in Germany, but only a hand of us like had a layover in France. And so we were like, we're gonna be in Paris for a while. Let's explore.
Yeah, that was so cool because we didn't know until like the day of the trip. Well, I think maybe a little bit before, but just saw that we were going to be going to Paris. We didn't realize until we were like on the trip how long it would be. And so like Audra said, we were like, oh, it'd be really wonderful to explore. And some of our other classmates, the other medical students, were just like so excited. And I was like, man, I want to go. But then I was like, at the same time, it's like we're like in a foreign country and like none of us have ever been to Paris before. And like, what if we get lost? And I don't know. I mean, it was a pretty long layover. It was like 10 hours and we ended up having a little bit more time at the end of it because our flight got delayed. But I was like, man, I was like, how could we be in Paris and not go explore, but like we have no idea where we're going. But it was really amazing the way that God worked it out. It ended up being us medical students as well as two families that ended up having to lay over in France. For whatever reason, God just worked it out this way. And it was really amazing because one of the ladies, she was with her two sons and she was like, oh yeah, she's like, me and my family did like a vacation here not too long ago. She's like, oh, I can show us around. I remember where things are. We were just like, wait, what? Like, God gave us a layover in Paris and also gave us like our own tour guide that was basically already with us. It was just insane the way that he worked it out. And man, we were all so excited. I mean, I never imagined, going to Paris. And it was just like this wonderful little gift that God, well, really a big gift that God gave on this trip. We're like, oh, we're just going to Angola. Had no idea that we'd have a long layover in Paris and actually get to like go out and see the city. And so we took the little train and stuff like that. And we actually got to go out and explore and walk the streets of Paris. And oh, it was just such an amazing day. And it was really cool because one of the things we got to do, of course, if you're in Paris, you want to see the Eiffel Tower. And so it was a really long walk getting there. But when we got there, we were all so shocked because you can see this tower throughout the city as you're walking through, but you don't realize until you get close up to it how big it is. And so we get up to it and we needed to, go through like the check-in process and stuff. And we're all excited. And it was cool because Adwoa had another experience with somebody that was kind of checking our stuff. And yeah, it was just really amazing to see what God showed us and getting to see the Eiffel Tower and how it helped to bring the message in John that she was reading about to life.
Yeah, it was just so amazing. And everything was just so go, go, go that like I really didn't have a chance to share much. And so I think I remember just mentioning to Lauren, oh my goodness,
I'm gonna tell you
I have so much to tell you. Like this is nuts. And it was just like, what? And just like, yeah, well let's just go on this, let's see what's going. And so we get off and like we're in Paris. Like
oh,
we're in
how cool.
Paris. Like our feet are on the ground in Paris. Whoa. So we like got out, took so many pictures walking
Oh yes,
around,
many
and
pictures.
yeah, we got to go see the Eiffel Tower. And in my mind I'm still thinking like, okay, like God says I'm lifted up, what is he trying to show me? And like before I got off the plane, like I was like, Lord, what does it mean like when I'm lifted up your jaw meant to me? And like God was literally like, watch me, I'll show you. So I was like, okay. So I had my ears open and I was just watching to see like what God was going to do next. And so we get out, we were walking around, we walk all the way with our like hand luggage to the Eiffel Tower. And I just remember approaching it and I was just looking up, just like, oh my goodness, this thing is massive.
It
Like,
is.
how do people even build this thing? And then just like going they had security, of course, and I just remember just like entering. I'm like, wow, this is the Eiffel Tower. This is the place. Just seeing birds everywhere and like so many of them, and it was beautiful. It was like a partly cloudy day, and I was just taking in the scenes. And we go in through the security, and they look through our stuff, make sure we're not carrying anything suspicious in there. And so it's my turn, and I'm going in, and the security officer, he looks at me and he was just like, young lady, are you a born again Christian? And I was just like, yeah, I'm born again for sure. He was just like, great. So do you have the spirit in you? I was just like, I believe so. And he was just like, well, that's great. Do you speak in tongues? And I was just like, well, like I do speak a language. And that is a tongue. And he kind of chuckled. He was like, all right, well, let's see what you got in your bag. And so he opens my bag, and the first thing it's like on top was my Bible. And he was just like, oh, you are a woman of God. And I was like, yeah, sure. And he kind of just like looks through the rest of my things, and he was just like, all right, you can pass through. And I was like, great. He was just like, well, it's nice meeting you. I was like, thanks, nice meeting you too. And I was like, that is interesting. So walk through, meet up with the rest of the group, and we're just like, whoa, this is so cool. And people are around speaking French and all these different languages. And there's so many birds. They were so like big and plump. And I was like, great,
They were
everyone's
so
feeding
cute.
them. They're just like loving this place. And wow, this thing was huge. And so we just took our time. We had the whole day in Paris, the whole day. And like our flight ended up getting even more delayed. And so we had the whole day. And the good thing is it was in the summer and the sun didn't set till like way late at night.
It was like
And it
9
was
or something like
so
that.
fantastic. Yeah. And we just were like, great. We have literally the whole day. And so we got crepes, we got baguettes. We just literally were just like, let's just get as much as the French experience we can. And so we got all of our goodies and went to a place to sit and just enjoy. And I'm not much of a sweet tooth person, and so while we were sitting down and eating our crepes, I was kind of like brushing off the sugar flakes because I was like, oh, this is too much. So like I was trying to brush it off on the floor, and I ate like the rest of the crepes, and literally like a bird or two just kind of swooped down to like the crumbs that were falling on the floor that I placed on the floor, and then they kind of looked at me, ate the bread, looked at me, ate some of like the sugar crumbs, and then like flew away. And then its friend came and did the same thing. Bread, look at me, bread, fly away. And I was like, that's pretty cool. That's interesting. And then at the end of our French day, we started heading back to the plane.
And just another thing that was really interesting with going to the Eiffel Tower, it was kind of cool because, as we were thinking and like as we talked about it afterward, we're just like, huh, that's so interesting because, the Eiffel Tower is this, amazing sight that, not only the people of Paris, but people all over the world want to come and see. And so it really is something that attracts, the attention of the world. And it was interesting how God was able to kind of highlight this parallel with himself, where it's like just as Jesus is lifted up and draws all men to himself, it's like the Eiffel Tower was like this thing that we were able to witness in person that was high and lifted up that just drew people to it, just naturally because of its size, because of its greatness. It's like people want to see this thing and experience it for themselves. I mean, you can see pictures all you want, but until you actually see it for yourself, it's not the same. It's not a real experience. And so the same thing with God, it's like when Jesus was saying that, he was trying to show like when I'm lifted up, when I'm being sacrificed, like this will be an amazing sight that will draw the attention, that will draw the hearts of all people. So it was just really cool looking back on that and seeing the way that God answered, that prayer in a very practical way.
Yeah, definitely. And literally, it was like after that trip, it was I got the same impression where I was just like, huh, yeah. Just as the Eiffel Tower is lifted up above the earth, so big, it's drawing people and birds resting in its shade. And not only that, but getting fed. I was like, huh, wonder what more he's going to show about this. And he just, it was definitely a journey on this trip. We came back, headed back on the plane, and I think, yeah, on the way to Angola, I believe we were sitting together this time.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and so it was like, okay, well, we're back together now. So during this plane ride on the way to Angola now, I think I was able to explain a little bit to Lauren just
Yeah,
what I experienced on the plane ride to France, and it was just like, wow, like
I was
what
like
is
mind blown. I was like, wait, what? Like God showed you all of this? Like this is amazing. It was so cool.
And I was just like, wow, like this is so cool. Like we didn't even get to our destination yet, and God is already like pouring out blessings. And so we got to Angola and we got put with different people to be like roommates. And yeah, like we didn't choose who our roommates were. And so we got put with one of our friends. She was such a blessing to us, and we got to talk some on that trip back. And she was also sharing some things about herself to us. And it was just such a like God ordained moment. it was such a precious moment, and we got to share some of like what I learned on the plane. And she was like, wow, like I actually really needed to hear that. And it was just like the first I guess realization that this message is meant for healing and to bring people to really understand like the heart of God's mission here on earth, and that he is planning to just allow us to just, as we stay connected to him, just produce this change and healing and peace and be fruit of the spirit.
No, it's so true. It was really interesting to see, like, especially in that moment, because I remember we had just gotten to our room that evening. I think it was maybe like the first night that we actually got to where we were going to be staying in Angola. And yeah, we were just kind of sharing, or Adwoa was sharing what she had been learning, and we were just kind of talking about it. And you could just see, how receptive it was and how much she was enjoying the message. And she was, just kind of saying, like, how blessed she was with it. And we got to pray together afterward. And it was really cool in that moment just to see God's spirit work. And not even just that moment, but there was also another girl on the trip who was wanting to learn more about God and, what a relationship with him looks like. And so it was also cool the way that God put her in our path too, because we were also kind of able to share about, what does a day-to-day relationship with God look like, and what does it look like to seek after him and to want to know him more. And she just had a lot of, basic questions about Christianity, and it was really cool to be able to share with her. So it was really amazing the way that God set up the trip, that he was pouring into us and teaching us all of these things, but he also gave us opportunities, not only to minister to the people that we were coming in contact with that, lived in Angola, but, also amongst the people that were on the trip with us.
Yeah, and it was the beginnings of just seeing the power of God's message and how it can bring hope to people and bring healing, and just how much it brings hope to us too as we go through it. And really, this trip in Angola was, it was really a fun one. And we had some of our members go out and explore and learn that like manna still falls in Angola, and they went and explored it for themselves. Unfortunately, we weren't part of that excursion. We had to actually fly out to Malawi. So for like unforeseen circumstances, our trip had to be changed. We planned to spend a month in Angola, and there was certain complications that came up. And so our school was like, okay, I know you plan to stay a month here. Let's just reroute your trip somewhere else. And so they did their thing, and they were just like, okay, here are your tickets. This is what we're going to do. You're going to fly to Malawi, and you're going to spend the rest of your 2 weeks in Malawi and, have fun, enjoy yourself. And so we were like, okay. So they like coordinated it. And before we know it, we were like, okay, we got another layover, this time in Johannesburg, South Africa. And we were like, great, this is fun. This is great. We're just going on this trip with God, and look what he's doing.
No, it's so true. And yeah, I think just kind of this experience as well, this layover as well as the one in Paris, was just, again, just really felt like God was pouring out his love, kind of like we've talked about throughout the podcast so far, with, the water being like the spirit, and this water flowing from the temple is really just like God's love that continues to flow toward us, and really is just there to revive us, to rejuvenate us, to change us and transform us. And it was just so beautiful to experience God's love throughout this trip. And especially with those moments, it was just kind of like this stuff that we didn't anticipate that ended up being such amazing experiences. Like, it was kind of like God was like, oh, you think you're just going to Angola, but actually I'm going to take you to Paris, I'm going to take you to Angola, I'm going to take you to South Africa and Malawi. So we basically got like a 4-part trip in one. And it was just absolutely amazing. And it was cool too, because we actually had another classmate that was also doing mission work in Malawi by herself there. So she was staying at the hospital. And so she went on the trip by herself. And so we actually ended up getting to join her. And it's cool too, because, if you can imagine, if you're going on a mission trip by yourself, and you're not with a group, imagine how lonely that would be. And she said that, the people there were telling her that she had some classmates from Angola that were coming. And she's like, wait, they're supposed to be there for a month. I'm confused. So she was like, huh, it can't be them. And then we just kind of show up and it's like, hi, we're here. And so it was just really cool to be able to join her. And so I think it was something that was helpful for her and for all of us to just have that community. And the experience in Malawi was also just amazing. We met a lot of really wonderful people, got to shadow in the hospital in different areas like pediatrics and in surgery, and got to assist with different things, and also got to assist with like maternal care. And just the people were so kind and loving. And even the hospital staff, some of the clinical officers we worked with were just phenomenal people and really taught us so much. And so they're basically like doctors there. And, they knew so much more than we did. We had just finished our first year at medical school, so there wasn't a whole lot that we knew. And they just taught us so much. And not only about, I guess, like medicine, but also about, just kind of like day-to-day life stuff and just, pushing through for your dreams. And so it was a really amazing experience.
It was amazing. And the four of us that were rerouted to Malawi were like, all right, well, we're just going to see how this is going to go and play out. And we were so happy that we're able to meet our classmate, Joyce, on this trip. And she was so happy to see us, and we were so happy to see her. And we just had like a reunion there at the table. But it was surreal experience spending those 2 weeks. And one of the experiences that I think we really enjoyed was hiking up a mountain. So here's
Another
a
mountain
mountain
topic
again.
too.
Yeah, here's that mountain. And so we went up and hiked up Mount Mulanje. And this mountain sure does test your fitness. And
True.
so I think we were walking for like 8 hours.
Probably. It was definitely a full day affair. It was fun, but it was a lot.
It was, yeah, it was a very long trip. And so we had a tour guide with us to show us the way to go. And he was like, yeah, you can't go to the top in one day. Like people camp to go to the top. And they're like, if you want a day trip, you'll do this route. And so we're like, okay, yeah. So our tour guide was leading us and showing us the way and like pointing things out. And it was just beautiful. It was a beautiful place. Like, the skies were so blue and clear, and there was so many trees, and just being out in nature was just so serene and just like so in its natural state. And we were like really doing our best working out, trying to get to the top of this mountain, or at least as far as we can. And people, like the locals, were like walking barefoot up with like loads, like really heavy loads, carrying them like it was nothing.
They
And
were
we were,
carrying trees, like literal trees. We're like,
yeah,
how are you doing this?
yeah, like they were just like blah, blah, like really just like walking up there like it was nothing. And our tour guide was like in flip-flops, and we had like our tennis shoes and everything, and like our snacks and stuff.
Trying not to die.
Yeah. And so we made it to this peak. And yeah, I just remember like looking up at the trees, and I recognized them, the fruit on that tree, and I was like, oh, I know that fruit. And
It's called masuku. It's a wild fruit that I've seen growing in Zambia.
so I was like, whoa, that's a fruit. I was like, are they like ready to be picked yet? And he was just like, yeah, no, they're still like, they're not ready yet. They're not ripe yet. But when they are, they're so good and sweet. And I was like, oh yeah, they are. Kind of disappointed that they weren't ready to be picked. But yeah, but I was just like, trees, fruit, interesting. And yeah, we kept going on this trip, and it was so fun for all of us.
Yeah, and it's cool not only with the fruit that you saw, but it was kind of like all these little object lessons as we were going along. For quite a bit of the time when we were hiking, we were trying to get to this area where there were waterfalls until we finally got to it. And it was beautiful, and we really just kind of got to sit on the rocks and just enjoy the scenery. And it was just interesting because, again, it's like seeing this waterfall, it was reminding us of Ezekiel 47 with the water flowing from the temple. And again, we mentioned seeing a lot of birds in Paris, and also, when we were hiking and stuff on the mountain, just seeing all these birds kind of coming through and seeing all these different types of trees. We also found out they have a lot of cedar trees there. And at one point, we passed by some people that were actually burning the wood, and we're like, wow, this smells so good. And when we asked what it was, the guy told us, oh, this is cedar wood. And we actually got to bring back a little bit of the bark. We wanted to have a little souvenir. And yeah, it was just really cool because it's like when you burn this wood, it has a really nice scent. And it just kind of went along with some different things that God was showing us and we'll talk about it in one of our future episodes about fragrance and how that's kind of like almost like a metaphor for how the gospel works, that it's like a sweet smelling aroma. And when we are able to share the gospel with people, when we live lives that resemble that of Christ, that we're able to spread his aroma amongst people. And it is a smell, it is an aroma that can bring life to others. And so just like all of these things that really came together. So it was like God was teaching us in his word about these things and showing us all these symbols, but then on the hike and throughout the trip, we really got to see those things in practice. And so it just made it so much more rich, where it's like, now when we were seeing these trees on the hike, when we saw fruits, it was just like, wow, there's a deeper meaning with this.
Yeah. And it was just so cool. Like literally had to carry cedar bark, and
Nice.
I still have it. And
Me too, I have my little piece.
the scent is still there. It's kind of faint, but still after almost 3 years now.
Wow.
2 years, 3 years,
Yeah.
2 years, 2 years. That was like 2 years now, and like the scent is still there. It's faint, but still there. And I'm sure if I was to burn it, it would be a lot stronger. But yeah, like I learned that cedar bark, the scent actually repels insects, which I thought was pretty interesting. And it just kind of goes back to like this whole tree message of getting rid of the pests, or at least the bad things, and like keeping things pure and purified. But yeah, like the whole trip was just like object lessons of going back to this whole tree planted by the water idea, and coming back from this mountain top experience again. It was towards the end of our 2 weeks in Malawi, and it was like a nice like grand finale. And like God just had like way more beyond our wildest dreams on this trip. Like what? um and like one of the things is like in our room, we didn't notice it until like later on. We noticed that there is this picture, and it's a painting of two birds, and they are standing on these branches filled with fruit. And then when we noticed it, we're like, whoa, hold up, okay, this is interesting. And so like now it's like every time we see birds, it is like a reminder of, being in God's covering, being in his shelter. When we see trees, we're being reminded of this message, and now fruit on the branches of this trees that the birds are sitting on. It was just like, wow, there's so much to this. And literally God was like, you're getting launched, but I'm getting launched with you.
So true. Yeah, it was really cool. And just, yeah, some of these things we didn't even notice initially, but it's like when it actually came up, we're like, wait, what? Like there's even more to connect with what God has. Like literally this trip just had endless surprises. And another really cool thing, again, just showing God's providence. Adwoa actually ended up getting to see her grandparents while we were on the trip, which was super, super cool. If you want to talk more about that.
Yeah, honestly, this was just amazing. So initially I was looking, before even like going on this trip or anything, like I was looking for a possible mission trip to Zambia, close to a village where my family is. And unfortunately, like they were swamped and couldn't like handle a medical student. So that trip was closed. I was like, okay, well, that's fine. I'll go to Angola. Um, But yeah, like I was like, oh, it'll be a chance to like see my family, see my grandparents, and I haven't seen my grandparents in years. And like when my parents heard that I was going to Malawi, they were so happy. They were so happy. The hospital that we were working at was their alma mater. That's actually where my parents met. And so, like, it was pretty cool going to the place where my parents met. And I was there years before just to visit family. Also, my uncle works close by to the place where we were to stay. And so he actually picked us from the airport when we landed in Malawi, and my parents communicated with him that we're coming there. He picked us from the airport, and it was just like, wow, like my uncle is here picking us up. And he like brought us to where we need to be, and he pretty much like checked in on us here and then just to
So
make sure
sweet.
we're okay. And wow, like he's such an amazing uncle. Him, my aunt, he invited us all to his house, and like they prepared this lovely meal for us like on a Saturday afternoon, and we played with his kids, my cousins, and like wow, it was just so nice. It was
Mm.
just so nice to see my uncle Peterson, my aunt Mary, my cousins Nina and Noel. Noel, my cousin, was just like so happy to just be around young people and to be with us, and we played games together, and it was just so fun. Like my uncle does this prison ministry in Malawi, and
Oh,
he was like, would you like to see my prison? And we were like,
I've never been
sure.
asked that before, but sure.
I know. I was like, I've never been to prison before, but this is great. I mean, gotta check it out sometime, I guess. so, um, so yeah, he took us to the prison that he does his ministry at, and they were like, okay, no phones or anything. So we left our phones in the car, and we walked in, and they kind of did a brief like check-in, and they're like, all right, you're in. So we entered into the prison, all of us, just like that, and we interacted with the inmates, and we had like a Bible study, vespers, singing, worship. I just watched my uncle Peterson just work in his element, and he like the prisoners love him, oh my goodness. And like he was able to just put together this like program for them and singing for them, and um just showing them the love of God, and really showing them that, look, yeah, sure, you made some decisions in life that brought you here, but that's not the end. Like, don't let that be the ending of your story. And just really brought them hope to where they could really like get like in touch with the Savior and with God. And you could just see the peace and the joy that these prisoners had in the midst of their situation. And talking with my uncle, he was talking about how they have some ways to like get them back in society, and like even ways that where they can go and ask for forgiveness from the people that they hurt or harmed, and get them back into the society, and the people forgive them and give them another chance. And yeah, so that's the ministry he was doing, and he brought us in a glimpse of that, and I was like, wow, this is a mission. This is what being a healing tree is like. Um, this is his healing tree story.
This is Gilbert Chilwa, no, not Gilbert Makolo, who has just been released from prison. He's now 2 weeks old in the village. He's trying to make himself resettle back in the village, doing gardening. So this is the garden where he's doing his farming. He's planting rape, planting tomatoes, and that's his sprayer. This is the whole garden. As you can see it, the whole garden. That's a friend who is trying to be with him so that he cannot think of the evil ways again, but he's doing his work here. As you can see him, he's using this water can to water his plants. He wants to resettle because he has been received, has been reconciled with the family and with the village people. He is resettling very well and he's happy, but he has some little problems that he has, which we are trying to give him some help.
All of our healing tree stories are different. And so, yeah, my parents, again, they were like so ecstatic that we were in Malawi, and it is like next door neighbors to Zambia. So they were able to find a way that my grandparents get on a bus, a 10-hour bus ride to come and see me. And so my grandparents, they're so precious. They just like came and like we were just so happy, and I was so happy to see them. I have not seen them in so long, and it was such a precious moment, this reunion, and just like so much love filled the room. And my grandparents just loved my friends, and
We
my
love them
friends
too.
loved them too. Oh, it was just such I was so humbled. I was like, Lord, I can't handle this love. Like, this is just so overwhelming right now. Like,
Yeah.
wow, what? What?
It's like he literally thought of everything. And I mean, obviously they weren't our grandparents, but even just seeing that was so touching. I was like, wow, God, like it was just so beautiful to see the care, the thoughtfulness that he had, that it's like you're going on this trip, but I'm gonna send you to somewhere where you get to see your family who you don't get to see often at all. And it was really touching. And her grandparents, her uncle and his family were all so sweet, and they definitely blessed us so much. And it was cool to also, as we kind of went on the trip, we also got to see how God really answered the desire of all of our hearts. Like the two other medical students that were with us, it was interesting because talking to them both, they had said that one of them had said that she said that she'd heard about this particular mission hospital at some point before, and she really wanted to go on a mission trip there. But typically, the hospital in Malawi doesn't accept first year or people that have finished first year of medical school. They typically will have students that are a little bit further along in their education before they have them to come and work at the hospital. And so it was amazing the way that God opened it up, that all of us having just finished our first year, were able to go and work at this hospital. And so she got the desire of her heart. And then the other girl also mentioned a similar thing, that I think she was looking into the trip in Malawi, and then it was closed off or something else happened, and so it was something that she wanted, a place she wanted to go to, but it didn't seem possible. And so again, God answered the desire of her heart, and she got to be ultimately where she wanted to be. And it was just like, oh God, like wow, it was literally just an outpouring of his love in every way imaginable. And even just talking about it now, I'm just like, man, I really wish I could just relive this trip. It was literally, I think, yeah, it was like a dream come true.
Speaking of dreams, this text that like God showed me from Proverbs, in Proverbs 13 verse 12, and it says that hope deferred makes a man sick, but a dream fulfilled is a tree of life. And we mentioned that we are medical students, and our calling is to become healers. And our dream is to become doctors, healers, And through this story of these trees in Ezekiel 47, God was like, I'm calling you to this mission of becoming a healing tree. This is the dream. This is the dream where I will make you a healing tree. All you have to do is stay connected to me, abide in my shade, take in my spirit, and I will transform you as you experience the healing that comes from me. You will be able to share that healing with others through leaves that heal, and you got fruit for food, and the fruit is my spirit. And the only way that you can heal others is if you stay connected to me. And so like our dream is to become a healing tree. where we are connected to God and we're able to meet the needs of people spiritually, mentally, and physically. And that's the doctors he's calling us to be. And this dream is not limited to doctors. This dream is for everybody. Everybody is called to be a healing tree in whatever capacity you find yourself in, whether it is being a janitor. You can be a healing tree through being a janitor, through teaching, through anything. Whatever God is calling you to do, that passion that's in your heart, he's like, I will give you what you need to be a healing tree where you're able to touch the lives of people through the ways that are bestowed upon you and really connect them to me. And that is what it means when I am lifted up. When I am lifted up. When you allow me to lift myself up in you, you become a healing tree erupted from the ground and bearing fruits as a witness for all to be. Come and really, like the fish in the water, be fishers of men. It becomes a testament of faith where people are drawn to this healing tree, to God, the ultimate healing tree, as he reflects his image on us.
Oh, man, I just love that. Wow, so nicely packaged. Wow, great job.
No, that was good. That was good.
Yeah, and so just really like in closing, just all of these things, it really was absolutely amazing. And like Adwoa said, this dream is not only for us or for people that want to go into health professions, but for anyone. And I think that's one of the things that I value the most about the gospel is how simple it is, but also the fact that it's for everyone. And God has given us all different gifts, has given us all different callings on our life. And so each person's mission field, each person's work looks different, and that is perfectly fine. And it's wonderful because it means that, you know, we're able to reach the world in so many different capacities and in ways that also are enjoyable for you. I think that, you know, God really puts passions in our heart for a reason. And so I guess just kind of an encouragement for you guys, you know, whatever profession or whatever it is that you find yourself doing in life, you know, see how God might be calling you to really be a healing tree in your work. I think that wherever it is that God allows us to be is our mission field. It's easy to kind of think of doing mission work as, you know, somewhere that's across the world or, you know, with certain types of people, but wherever we find ourselves, whether that be at school or even at home or in your workplace, wherever you might be in life, that is your mission field. And so, yeah, just, you know, pray and see where God might lead you. And it is his dream for all of us to become healing trees. And that is so exciting. And like we've mentioned in our experience, God will take you on some amazing journeys and will do things that you never imagined. And a life with him is just so enjoyable. You really don't know what's going to happen. And it's just so exciting and so much fun because your best friend, your God, your Savior is going with you.
So, yeah, so like after this trip, we came back and meeting our families again. It was great. And it was like, whoa, what just happened? Oh my goodness, cannot wait to just share this with family. And like on the way back, like heading back, the Lord made it very clear. He was just like, this message, I want it to be shared. And I remember just thinking, okay, with who, with what, like
How?
platform, how, what. And so I was like, all right, well, Lord, I'm willing to share it. And I'm really excited to share this message. Just give me the platform and when and how and who, when, what, where. And so, yeah, I remember heading back on the plane and I was sitting by one of our classmates who was on the trip with us. And I kind of was able to kind of drop a little bit of some of that information in my discussion with her. And I felt like it was a really meaningful discussion that we had on the way back, and coming back and like reuniting with family and friends and getting back in our routines and stuff. Like God made it so, like, he literally thought of everything. Came back and I think Lauren headed back home to Texas, and then so I stayed home, of course, home where as close to our school and everything. So I went to the Vespers we go to that one of our ministries on campus hold, and it was at a nearby like cafe restaurant type thing that they were holding this Bible study Vespers. And like that was the first time I got to reunite our pastor, and she this is Pastor Schiff, and I was like, I have to tell you. She was like, whoa, you're back. I was like, oh my goodness, yes. And so like I just start sharing. I just start like pouring out like what I could. I was like, yo, this drip, like God spoke so loud. And she was like, oh, tell me more. And like we were in the parking lot and we were like so loud and just like what? Oh my goodness, are you serious? Yes. And we were like making a scene, but we were just like, we didn't care. We were just so excited. We were just like, yeah. And she was just like, you know what? God has been speaking to me too. I was like, what? And so we were just like having this like praise session of just spitting out words of like things that God has been really revealing to us. And then she was like, you know what? You need to record this. You need to write all of this down because, you know, this is some really important stuff. And I was like, wow. I was like, then I told her, you know what? I need to share this message. I just don't know what platform. I was like, I feel like I should be getting more involved, like teaching Sabbath school more and more. And she was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure.
You can do that.
And so, yeah, she was able to give me days, like consecutive weeks where I just like did a series to like my Sabbath school group and just like was like, all right, here we go. And just literally just went through the whole healing tree message as much as I could with my class. And God has been so good because I came back, but I wasn't staying at home because I was house sitting. So I was house sitting for some friends of family friends. And I got this whole house to myself, really. And I really just had to worry about myself and, of course, taking care of the house and watching their dog, which was great. And so I spent hours putting all of this healing tree message, just writing it all down, just like studying writing. And it like literally hours of the day in, day out, my mornings were just like Bible study, and then the rest of the day was like the house upkeep and like all of the things. And I spent like a good, like probably a month, more than a month in that house. And my sister would come visit me and like spend time with me sometimes, and that was nice. And I was like, if I was staying at home, I wouldn't have this kind of time dedicated to like this, like uninterrupted time to like pour out these messages. I would, you know, be getting involved with other things, just doing stuff like, you know, around the house and like spending time with my family. But God gave me this time with just me and him in that house alone and just pouring out these messages. And it was just like more in depth, more in detail through more text of the Bible. And so I made this whole document of all of this information just stored into my device. And so I was able to share this message with my church, young adult group, our Crave Ministries group that we mentioned. And I was like, wow, this is great. And like God gave me more avenues to share with our school ministries for medical students. I was able to share a little bit of that and just like small things here and there. And I was like, okay, good, great. I get to share like some of these, you know, things here and there. But I was like, wow. And like God was like, all right. I was like, well, this is what God means to share. And it wasn't until like way later on, like, I mean, we're in 2020, this was 2018, that God was like, all right, podcast time. We will tell the details of that story in a later episode, so keep a lookout for that, because that's its own like ordeal. But yeah, so that is how we got the message of the healing tree, and a lot more was added onto that since 2018. It wasn't just left alone, but a lot more got added onto it. And Lauren learned a lot in their studies, and like I learned in my studies through the Bible, and we've just been sharing. And then I just would just add to this document, and I created slides that I would share with my young adult group. And literally that's the same information that we're using for this podcast. that has been built in 2018 and just been added on for the last 2 years.
It's like, oh my God, would have known when we were first starting the podcast, we were just like, wow, like literally if God had not provided that time to do the house sitting, it's like, imagine trying to think of all that stuff again and try to find all the references, but God gave you that protected time with him to really just enjoy being in his presence and also be able to document all of these things. And when we started the podcast, it was just like, wow, we like literally have everything. It's just going back through it. And it was amazing too, even just going back and like studying the stuff again. It was just almost as if like seeing it for the first time, and it just like reignited that passion. And yeah, it's really amazing. God will provide everything you need. If he calls you for something, he will give you the means to do it. And sometimes you might not even understand why he allows certain things to happen the way that they did, but he has a plan for it all. He's so thoughtful and just faithful to his plans for your life.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And as we mentioned before, we're medical students, and there is absolutely no way that I would have been able to pour out the amount of time that I spent in the summer during school. And so it was like that amount of time was protected and needed before school started, because it was just not going to happen like that in the same way in that amount of time to carry that bulk of information. And so, yeah, God is amazing. And when you just let him take control of your life, honestly, it is the most exciting and fun thing you could do, because he will take you places with your feet. He will guide your feet and be like, here you go, we're going on, and watch me work. And it's literally just being like, wow, Lord, the Lord did that. We cannot claim this on ourselves. This is literally God speaking. This is his work, and we're just like vessels just being like, all right, well, here it is.
Yes, we are along for the ride. We literally, as we've been saying throughout the podcast, we just showed up.
Literally just showed up, and we were just like, all right, we literally just sat in the plane and we're just launched. He did the hard stuff. And so we're just sharing the messages that God is so passionate about wanting us to share. And this is why we are calling this the Healing Tree Podcast. And we hope that you are inspired and, really learn to trust a God like this. And if you already are in a trusting relationship with God, amazing. And just like continue to just let God guide you and transform you into a healing tree.
We just wanted to thank all of our friends who were gracious enough to be in this podcast. If you're interested in knowing more about the prison ministries that my uncle Peterson does, Prison Ministries is part of the Soche SDA Adventist Church in Malawi. It's part of the Malawi Union Conference. And you're interested in helping out, they could actually use some help. This COVID situation has impacted them especially hard, and a number of their church members tested positive, so it's been a great serve in the same way they have before. And so they are in need of soap, hand sanitizers, face masks, buckets for hand washing, and anything in relation to COVID, really. And so we will put the contact information in the description box if you're interested in helping the Soche SDA Church. If you're interested in donating or helping them out, we will leave information down below in the description box. And you can feel free to contact them for more information and to ask them any questions you may have. For that, we thank you again for listening to our podcast, and we will see you here next time.
And we'll be starting our crushing series, kind of going through, some different things with trials and how God can use that in helping to mold and shape us more into his likeness.
What is coming next? These next few episodes are information that is actually information that we learned after this trip. We thank you for listening to our story, and we're looking forward to the next story and for our crushing series coming up. Until then, all the best, and we're excited to hear your stories. All right, take care. If you like what you just heard, We encourage you to stay up to date with our latest information and follow us on our Instagram page and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And if you have any questions, feel free to leave your comments and questions on our social media platforms. We would love to stay in touch with you, answer any questions that you might have, and offer whatever support we can.